this is going to work because I've already tried it a couple times, but this is me reading a book. I'll try to do short videos, so it'll be easier. It's called No Bad Parts. It was recommended to me to read by my counselor, one-time counselor, Walking Counseling Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And she said that it would help with me feeling like, I explained to her about how it's hard for me to make decisions, because whenever I try to make decisions, it's like I want all the different things all at once, and it's hard to choose just one. And I miss my mom, because I used to be able to talk to her, and then I would know what to do. Well, most of the time. Sometimes I didn't listen to her. So I told her part of me wants one thing, part of me wants another thing. And so she said, I think you should read No Bad Parts. It's about something called IFS, Internal Family Systems. So part 1, that's what we're going to start with. Chapter 1, we are all multiple. I've already started reading this, and a lot of times I'm not sure what I feel. Some of this book kind of is a little weird. And anyways, I'm not going to tell my opinion. I'm just going to read the book. Occasionally I might tell my opinion. Okay, anyways, chapter 1, we're all multiple. We were all raised in what I'll call the mono-mind belief system, the idea that you have one mind out of which different thoughts and emotions and impulses and urges emanate. That's the paradigm I believed into until I kept encountering clients who taught me otherwise. Because the mono-mind view is so ubiquitous and assumed in our culture, we never really question the truth of it. I want to help you take a second look at who you really are. I'm going to invite you to try on this different paradigm of multiplicity that IFS espouses, and consider the possibility that you and everyone else is a multiple personality, and it's a good thing. I'm not suggesting you have multiple personality disorder, now called dissociative identity disorder, but I do think that people with that diagnosis are not so different from everybody else. What are called alters in these people are the same as what I call parts in IFS. And they exist in all of us. The only difference is that people with dissociative identity disorder suffered abuse, horrible abuse, and their systems of parts got blown apart more than most. So each part stands out in bolder relief and in more polarized and disconnected from the others. In other words, all of us are born with many subminds that are constantly interacting inside of us. This is, in general, what we call thinking, because the parts are talking to each other and to you constantly about things you have to do or debating the best course of action and so on. That's why my counselor told me to read the book. Remembering a time when you faced a dilemma, it's likely you heard one part saying, go for it, and the other part saying, don't you dare, because we just consider that to be a matter of having conflicted thoughts. We don't pay attention to the inner players behind this debate. IFS helps you not only start to pay more attention to them, but also become an active leader that your system of parts needs, an active internal leader. While it may sound creepy or crazy at first to think of yourself as a multiple personality, I hope to convince you that it's actually quite empowering. It's only disturbing because multiplicity has been pathological in our culture. A person with separate autonomous personalities is viewed as sick or damaged, and the existence of their alters is considered the product of a trauma, the fragmentation of their previously unitary mind. From the mono-mind point of view, our natural condition is a unitary mind, unless, of course, trauma comes along and shatters it into pieces like shards of a vase. The mono-mind paradigm has caused us to fear our parts and view them as pathological. In our attempts to control what we consider to be disturbing thoughts and emotions, we end up fighting, ignoring, disciplining, hiding, or feeling ashamed of those impulses that keep us from doing what we want to do in our lives. And then we shame ourselves for not being able to control them. In other words, we hate what gets in our way. This approach makes sense if you view those inner obstacles as merely irrational thoughts or extreme emotions that come from your unitary mind. If you fear giving a presentation, you might try to use willpower to override the fear. Just make yourself do it, or correct it with rational thoughts. It's not going to be that bad. If the fear persists, you might escalate your attempts to control by criticizing yourself or being a coward. What the hell? Why aren't you doing it? Numbing yourself into oblivion. Fine, I'll smoke. Or meditating to climb above it. Sorry, I'm embellishing. Anyways, when none of those approaches work, you wind up adapting your life to the fear, avoiding the situations where you have to speak in public, feeling like a failure and wondering what's wrong with you. And to make matters worse, you go to a therapist who gives you a diagnosis for your one troubled mind. The diagnosis makes you feel defective, and your self-esteem drops, and your feelings of shame lead you to attempt to hide any flaws and present a perfect image to the world. Or maybe you just withdraw from relationships for fear that people will see behind your mask and will judge you for it. You identify with your weakness, assuming that who you really are is defective, and that if other people saw the real you, they'd be repulsed. I totally relate to that part of the book. And here's a quote from Jonathan Van Ness, from The Queer Eye. Excuse me. People asked me if I was ready for my life to change. I don't think I really understood what they meant. It wasn't just that strangers would know who I was. It was this other thing that started to happen to me. When I looked in their eyes, sometimes there was a little voice in my head wondering, would you still be excited to meet me if you really knew who I was? If you knew all the things I've done? If you could see all my parts? So that's a quote. And we'll end this now and see if it worked.